Hello, Tennessee Voices viewers and listeners. This is David Plazas, the Opinion and Engagement Director for the USA Today Network Tennessee and the Tennessean. This is a special edition of the podcast focused on the May 3rd Davidson County primary election. I've invited all candidates to do a video, and those who've accepted are appearing on these links. And I want to thank Marcus Shute Jr., who is my guest today. He is a candidate for criminal court judge in Nashville, Davidson County. Mr. Shute, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for this opportunity and the platform to give me a chance to speak about my campaign.
Absolutely. And you've got a very interesting background because you were a teacher before you became a lawyer. Would you talk a little bit about that, please?
Absolutely. So when I graduated from Tennessee State, I enrolled in grad school to get a master's, and I was wanting to look for a job. And I talked to my old middle school teacher, friend Stewart, who was the then high school principal at East Lit, and told me that there was a position available there that was government in Spanish. She knew that my major was political science, and she knew that I was able to speak Spanish. And so she offered me the position if I would able to get an interim 2 license. And so at the time that I taught high school, I was the youngest teacher in Davidson County. I had just graduated the previous spring and then started teaching high school that following fall. I grew up in East Nashville, so it was kind of a full circle moment for me to go back into the same community where I grew up to teach high school to those, young kids there. But it was a great time. I really enjoyed connecting with people there and coaching the track team as well.
Well, excellent. And what eventually led you to want to go to law school and pursue this path?
So it was a few different things that led me to want to pursue the path to law. One thing in particular was being a teacher, you see that there are a lot of policies that are involved with students, and some of those policies are not focused towards the student, but more so in how the control that we have over the students in the schools. Sometimes that's considered a school to prison pipeline, where sometimes the issues that students are facing are not being addressed, and oftentimes teachers don't really have the resources to address them. And so, but for me as a younger student, I wanted to take a different approach and would have different conversations with my students about things that they were facing. And it led me to want to do something greater and to do something more. And so I knew that I wanted to do something in law and representing those that are less fortunate or representing those that are often overlooked and the voiceless. And so that led me to go to law school. So I left teaching to go work at a big box retail company. And I went to law school at night. And so I had to work during the daytime, go to school at night, and study whenever I had time rather. So.
Well, and in terms of the law that you've been practicing, could you talk a little bit about your legal career to date and what led you to want to run for judge?
Absolutely. So when I first started practicing law, I always represented indigent clients. And so indigent clients are folks that are charged with crimes that cannot afford an attorney, and they have to get appointed an attorney, a private attorney, if they conflict with the public defender's office. And so I had the opportunity when I first started practicing law to take indigent cases, from general sessions cases, juvenile court cases, felony murder cases in juvenile court, as well as felony cases and aggravated assaults in criminal court and trial court, so the same court that I'm running for. And because of the type of nature of criminal law, I didn't necessarily have to advertise to get clients in criminal defense, but you do have to do it for other areas like intellectual property. So that's another area of law that I practice, and engage people in that way. But I've always done criminal defense work from the inception of my legal career. And the thing that led me to run for judge is because Judge Fishburne announced his retirement. And Judge Fishburne is one of the courts where, as a defense attorney, you feel comfortable with having a trial because you know that you'll get a fair opportunity to be heard. And so for me, looking at the impact that the criminal courts have on our community, also looking at the opportunity to keep a standard of a fair courtroom, I felt necessary for me to run for office. Being a native Nashvilleian that grew up in North Nashville, the 2014 Brookings Institute report talked about 37208 being the highest incarceration zip code per capita. And so having lived through that, being someone that's from the area, I have a different type of connection to the issues that are going on. And I think that the cultural competency that I have from the issues that we see with the high violence, I think that I can bring some new ideas and a fresh perspective to the courtroom that can change the way our criminal justice system has been going.
One of the things that was very interesting to me in your survey is that you wrote that you've been discriminated firsthand as a law student, as attorney. And you said, if I have been, then undoubtedly every defendant in the criminal courts has faced some level of bias. Would you talk a little bit more about that, please?
Sure. So when I was in law school, I interned with Metro Nashville's Public Defender's Office. My teacher, Tennessee rules allow for law students, once they finish half of their school, they can practice law with the supervising attorney. And so during my time interning, I was practicing with the public defender's office, and I had spoken to a judge in open court, in her criminal court, the same type of court that I'm running for now, and had introduced my client to the court, had arraigned the client, had done a plea agreement with the court. And at lunch recess, my teacher said, to the court, "Hey, Judge, so-and-so, this is my law student, Marcus Shute Jr. He's, a 3L at Nashville School of Law. He's going to be a great attorney one day." And the judge's response from the bench was, as she peered over her glasses, and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I could have sworn that he was your client. I thought he was a defendant." And this is, in open court, in front of everybody that's in the court, the DA, other defendants, the people in the galley. And then, for me, that was the one experience that, because she verbally said it, you can say those things or think those things, but the fact that she felt confident, or just the audacity just to say those things verbally out loud, was something difficult for me to kind of digest as a young Black man that wants to practice law. And so then other experiences that I have is, when I first became an attorney, I would get bar carded in Davidson County and outside of Davidson County. And oftentimes it would be kind of given the look of contempt, as if I couldn't be an attorney because I'm a young Black man with long hair and locks. And so they would ask for my bar card, my driver's license, and my business card. And so again, like understanding that those are the experiences that I face, and I have a knowledge of how to navigate the legal system, I think that it's important to have somebody that has those experiences on the bench, so that way if somebody can express those things, they know that they'll be listened to fairly.
Well, talk to me a little bit about this. Is a contested race, of course, with 3 other candidates. Tell me a little bit about, for you, you've alluded to it earlier, but what makes you distinguished? Why should people vote for you for this position?
So I think that it's a combination of my lived experiences and my work experience. I don't think that having legal experience is the one-all check that you have to have in order to be a judge. I think that you have to be somebody that's involved with the community. Growing up in East Nashville, living in Berkshire Place apartments when I was an undergrad, I've lived on different areas of Nashville: South Nashville, North Nashville, West Nashville. And so I have the understanding of the different kind of layers and complexities of our city. And then when we look at the people that come in front of the court, a lot of those persons that are charged with criminal felony offenses are folks that are indigent, that live below the poverty line, that don't necessarily have access to the same resources as every citizen in Davidson County. And so for those reasons, I believe that it's important to have somebody that's well-rounded, somebody that's compassionate, somebody that understands that we need to do alternative types of sentencing. The experience that I have working what I consider like kind of the ground level in high schools with students that are kind of developing and learning and becoming members of our society, and then working for a big box retail company where we saw 4,000 customers a day, and I was responsible for handling customer complaints. I think that you have to have somebody that has the proper temperance that can deal with high energy folks and low energy folks, and then also somebody that understands mental health issues. My major in undergrad was political science, and I minored in psychology. So I took time to understand some of how addiction can affect the brain, or how mental health issues affect behavior. And so when we look at the totality of my scope of my work and experience, I think that it's perfectly positioned to be a criminal court judge that has to deal with mental health issues and addiction issues, and folks trying to re-enter our community, and making sure that somebody understands that they need to have basic resources and basic kind of fundamental needs met in order to have them operating at a higher level in our society.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Marcus Shute Jr., candidate for Nashville-Davidson County Criminal Court Judge, Division 6. Make sure to vote early by the 28th of April, or to vote on Election Day on May 3rd. Any final words of wisdom for the audience before we conclude?
Well, the only thing that I would ask is that, they would get out and engage and vote. These judicial elections come around every 8 years. The next time that we'll have the opportunity to vote on judges will be 2030. And so this could be, close to a decade of somebody making decisions that it can impact thousands of Davidson County citizens. And I truly believe that I'm the best choice for anyone that's looking for selection to make in Division 6 criminal court judge. You can find out more information about my campaign at shootforjudge.com. And David, thank you so much for this opportunity and time. I really appreciate you taking the time out to have this platform and interview.
Thank you, sir. May you stay well and healthy, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.